The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. Our is a brand new deal. If you play just $5, get $50 in bonus funds when you sign up with promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently early Saturday morning, around 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time, here on August 23rd. I'm Rosso Rochelle, once again, going solo for this pod. Time to get into the breakdown of the final in Winston-Salem, the final episode before the U.S. Open. So we're going to break down the one matchup taking place on Saturday. Very weird event so far. I'll get into some of the recap of that, but either way, we've not really been able to do some shows. We were going to be back for the quarters, didn't work out. The lines came out too late. Then the semis, and unfortunately, one of the matches got rained out, so we ended up having to punt on that. And then, of course, we're here for the final. Now, once again, a weird event, a lot of upsets, a lot of, I'd say, unpredictable outcomes, but either way, point is we're here to break down a very unexpected final between Fucsovics and Zandschulp, but we're going to get into that matchup in a second. Before we get into the actual breakdown, though, of the match, a reminder that you could also check out the giveaway that SGPN is doing for the NFL season, a $1,000 NFL Circa bet, so keep that in mind. You can use the phrase that pays, and if you submit your phrase now, you have a chance to win the grand prize. Use the link, sportsgamepodcast.com/phrase, to enter the contest. Once again, sportsgamepodcast.com/phrase to get a chance to win a $1,000 Circa NFL future bet. Anyway, starting off with the recap from the preview-outrights episode, because we haven't actually recorded an episode since. For the lock and dog, we ended up splitting. For the lock, lost with Botsavaretti and Vukic moneyline parlay at -121. In hindsight, why the hell would I take Vukic in a parlay in 2025? So he ended up facing off against the guy making his ATP debut, and he got his ass kicked. It's my fault. I picked Vukic for apparently no reason, and I thought that despite being a clown, he could find a way to win against a complete unknown. He did not. He got buried. Botsavaretti did his part, but either way, didn't matter. For the dog, though, nice win. We ended up backing the young American. We took Blanche, team total over 12.5 games at +108 against Coric. Thought he would win the match as well. That was a +150. Coric has been awful all year, and Blanche ended up winning. But either way, nice win there for the team total at +108. So not that bad for the lock and dog. However, the outrights were an absolute bloodbath. We didn't win a single thing. Not good. Now, I will point out we did take some long shots for the actual quarters, etc., so those not working out, I guess, lessen the blow. Was not good. Once again, we got nobody right. Unfortunately, Medjedovic had a chance there. He had a bunch of set points against Pericard in the first set, choked him, and then punted the second set. Sonego punted the third set against Munar. A couple of guys we had who looked decent early in the event, just completely unraveled. But either way, a really bad episode for the outrights. But once again, for the lock and dog split, so we'll try to do better for the final. And of course, we have some outrights coming out for the U.S. Open over the next 24 hours. But point is, the episode itself was not very good if you factor in the outrights, and for the lock and dog, ended up splitting. Now, for the semifinal recap, I should say the semifinal recap, because we didn't have a match. Korda ended up dropping out before his matchup against Fucsovics. He claims that he ended up having an illness, so Fucsovics advanced to the final via walkover. Now, I would normally be fine with this because we saw, for example, Sinner get sick, and he ended up retiring midway through the final against Alcaraz in Cincinnati last week. However, Korda actually did the same exact thing about a year ago or so. So to get into the details, Korda, in 2 of the last 3 iterations of the Winston-Salem Open, has withdrawn before his semifinal match. I can understand one time, but you do this 2 out of your last 3 times at this event, Winston-Salem should stop inviting him. I mean, it's ridiculous. I understand illnesses can happen, and I get that you got the U.S. Open coming out in the next day or so. So I understand that Korda wants to be healthy for that event. Having said that, if you show up and withdraw before the semis 2 straight times in the span of 3 years in the same event, they should stop inviting you. Like, I understand it's pretty unfortunate for the fans who had to pay for tickets and saw 1 match. It was even worse because I believe, who was it? It was Salisbury and Skupski ended up also walking over in their doubles semifinal matchup. So if you paid for tickets for the Winston-Salem Open on Friday, you got screwed because you missed a doubles match and a singles match. But I got to mention Korda because he did win his quarter, then dropped out of the event. So either way, Korda doing Korda things. I had to mention him specifically because he's done this before, but a massive letdown for content for the semis because one of the matches just got pulled from under the rug, basically, and you ended up getting one matchup. Now, it was a fun match. You ended up getting the Zandschulp, who beat Perricard in straight sets. What a massive collapse by Perricard in that second set. He was up 5-2. It was one break, but still. You're Perricard, the best server on the entire tour, arguably, and you lose 5 games in a row to lose a set and the match. Ouch. Not very good. So, once again, you got a straight set win for the Zandschulp there in the semis. But the fact that you ended up seeing, once again, Korda drop out, and I see Sashi mentioning he was actually in Cincinnati for the Sinner dropout, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. I do want to ask, by the way, Sachi, if you don't mind sharing. Can I ask you how much the tickets were for the final? Because I know for a fact they're definitely more expensive than, of course, Winston-Salem semis, but I am wondering, did anybody offer like any type of financial compensation for what happened there? Was there any type of deal that was made to like lessen the blow for the fans? Because the fans paid, I'm sure, a decent price for Sinner Alcaraz, got 5 games of just Alcaraz winning, and then that was it. So, Sashi, I'm actually wondering, did you actually attend the event? It was $150. Okay. So, once again, that's a good deal for an Alcaraz-Sinner matchup, but of course, it went up in flames. Did the event offer you any type of, like, refund? Like, partial refund or something? I'm just curious. Did you end up getting something in return for whatever that was in Cincy? I'm kind of curious if you ended up getting some type of deal. I'm assuming no, but I'm just curious because I'm wondering if Winston-Salem did anything when a doubles match and a singles match for the semis end up resulting in a walkover. I'm just curious. So, yeah, Sasha, I'm wondering if you got any type of refund or something for that. But either way, that sucks, and I feel bad that you ended up getting great tickets. You sniped $150 for tickets there for Alcaraz Sinner, and you got 5 games of nothing. So either way, that sucks. Point is, though, once again, Korda pulled this stunt before. Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah, Sashi's mentioning there was a women's final after, which is fair, because Iga, of course, did beat Paolini right after that. So, yeah, once again, unfortunate. Sorry to hear that, Sashi, but either way, point is Korda doing Korda things, and he dropped out again before the semis for the second time in this event in the last 3 years. So that's why I really don't think that highly of Korda. I get that, illnesses happen and all, but you pull this stunt once, fine. Twice in 3 years in this event, they shouldn't invite you back. That's kind of my stance there, or at least maybe a grace period of maybe 2 years, a suspension of some sort. But if you're not going to be guaranteed to play in the semis of the event, and people are paying for tickets, then why would they keep inviting you back to play in the event? So that's kind of my stance on that. Either way, though, we now have a weird matchup in the final between Fucsovics and Zandschulp, which nobody saw coming. I feel like Fucsovics, I could have maybe have seen a path for. Zandschulp, nobody's picking to make the final. So once again, a weird tournament right before a Grand Slam, which is why people always say to tread lightly in these 250s right before Grand Slams. But either way, a point is the outrights were not good. Zandschulp, nobody could have called. I think Fucsovics, you might have found a path for, but still not the outcome or the, I'd say, result that we wanted, and definitely not the final we all expected. But it should be a fun matchup on paper, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. Now, before we get into the actual breakdown of the match itself, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBook.ag, because you can use them to bet on baseball, bet on WNBA, golf, tennis, and of course, football futures. You can also use crypto for fast payouts and use deposits. If not, though, use the promo code SGPN for a bunch of locations, which they have, once again, access to. So keep that in mind. You can't use it for a ton of states if your state is not legalized for sports betting. When you use the promo code SGPN, then when you sign up, you'll get a 50% deposit match up to 1K. Terms and conditions upon making G promo code SGPN. We're also brought by Rhythm because they have a lot of models for different sports. They have college football, which does start on Saturday, by the way. Keep an eye out for the Ireland game taking place between Iowa State and Kansas State. You also have some FCS stuff. So once again, a lot of games going on for week 0. Check out the NFL models because preseason's ending, NFL season is starting. So check out the Rhythm models for the NFL. They also were great on props last year for specific players. They had Josh Allen 15-8 on his props. They had Tyreek Hill 13-5. So check out Rhythm with the different sports. They have baseball, they have WNBA, they have golf, and of course college football and the NFL. Go to the site today, start building your models for week 1 of the NFL season. And a reminder, we have a nice promo link with Rhythm for a nice week trial for free. Use the link sportsgamblebox.com Rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the semis. Time to move on into the preview of the final taking place on Saturday between Fucsovics and Zandschulp. Now, for the actual matchup itself, getting into the odds here, Fucsovics is a favorite. He's minus 125. Now, Zandschulp's plus 106. For the spread, I see minus half a game for Fucsovics at minus 115. I see plus 1.5 for Zandschulp at minus 105. The over-under is at 22.5. Basically the same price both ways. For the team total, both players are at 12.5. Slight juice to the over on Fucsovics at minus 115. And for Zandschulp, it is minus 105 on the over, minus 125 on the under 12.5 for the team total. Now, for the set spread, you have Fucsovics in straight sets at around plus 190. You have Zandschulp to win in straight sets at plus 240. For the over 2.5 sets, I see around plus 130. So for the head-to-head, they have faced off a couple times before, and Zandschulp's been pretty good in the head-to-head. He's 2-1. Now, the meetings were close, I will point out, but Zandschulp did win the most recent meeting, which was 2 years ago on clay. However, they split the first 2 hardcourt meetings in Adelaide and in Stockholm, so Zandschulp right now is up 2-1, but the meetings are at least 2 years old, and on top of that, 2 of the 3 did go to a third set. So the point is they've been competitive. Zandschulp's been better, but that is pretty dated, so we'll see what happens here in this matchup. Now, for the path of both players, Fucsovics has been cruising for the most part, beat Gaston and Griekspoor. So Griekspoor was the only match he actually dropped a set in, as he won in 3. Gaston, though, was easy. Griekspoor in 3. Agut in straight sets, Munar in straight sets, and Korda via walkover. Now, Zandschulp has had a tougher go of it against weaker competition up to this point. Ended up beating Walton in 3, beat Arnaldi in straight sets, ended up beating Baez in 3, with a bagel in there, actually. He lost the first set 6-0, which was unexpected. Then he came back and he won in 3. Boo, which was the rain-delayed match. He was up, I believe, a set in a break, choked the second set away, and then eventually did win in 3, and then played again that same day as he ended up beating Perricard in straight sets. Should have been 3. Perricard punted the second set despite being up 5-2, and you saw Zandschulp win the final 5 games. So the point is, we're looking at the actual path. I think both guys have had a pretty weird path so far. I mean, Munar in the quarters is, I'd say, unexpected. But either way, we know he's had a decent year so far. He won a set off Alcaraz, and he almost beat Alcaraz on grass. But the point is, you're looking at what has been a pretty weird event so far, which is how we got this final. Now, for the pricing, I have to at least talk about the history that both guys have in these events. Because you're looking at Fucsovics having more success in ATP finals than Zandschulp. So far in their careers, by both them being veterans, Fucsovics is 2-2 lifetime in ATP title matches. However, he's 0-2 on hardcourt title matches. He is 2-0. I believe he is 2-0 on clay. So he did win a clay title last year, so he has some recent title. But once again, 0-2 on hardcourt on ATP title matches, so we'll see what happens in this one. Now, to Zandschulp, though, this is the first time he's made a final. That has not been in Munich, actually. He made the final back-to-back years in 22 and 23 in Munich. 22, he got injured, and he quit in the first set very early on, so that was pretty unfortunate. Then he had a rematch against Rune, which may have been the biggest choke job I've seen in an ATP title matchup. Now, you could argue that the Sinner French Open collapse is worse. The Zandschulp one against Rune is an all-timer, and I remember watching it. So I actually looked up the details for that final. Once again, the last final that you've seen Zandschulp in, which was 2+ years ago. So against Rune, in the third set, he was up 5-2 double break. He had three separate chances to serve for the match. So he was up 5-2. He had 5-3, he had a 40-15 on his serve at 5-2. He ended up punting it. So 2 match points down the drain got broken. Rune held to make it 5-4. Then you ended up seeing Zandschulp get broken again. Then you ended up seeing Rune in a twist of fate get broken. So Zandschulp, for the third time, had a chance to serve for his first ever ATP title. And he ended up choking it. So he had 2 more match points at 40-15, and he got broken, and then he lost the breaker. So to Zandschulp, last time he was here, I know it was on clay, not hard court, but still, the last time he was in the situation, he was up 5-2 with 3 chances to win his first title on his serve with 4 match points, and he lost. So it's an all-time choke job. Now, we've seen Zandschulp have moments at hard court, of course, ended up beating Nadal in the Davis Cup last year in his final career match, beat Alcaraz in straight sets last year on hard court. So we know that Zandschulp, when he's on, can still get the job done. However, the question is, do I think he can actually get the job done for once, or is he going to choke? It's a really good question. I'd say that Fucsovics, based on rest, has an advantage, because obviously he had a day off yesterday, and Fucsovics historically has some durability issues. So the fact is he was cruising, then he had a day off. You could argue it might ruin his momentum. On the other hand, we know he's injured all the time, so the fact is he should be rested for this matchup. Now, the same exact outcome actually happened in Winston-Salem 2 years ago, because I mentioned that Korda did this stunt before. In that event, Baez actually had to play an extra match, and Leheshka had a bye in the semis, and Leheshka lost. So the extra rest actually hurt Leheshka in the final when we saw this before. Now, do I think it's a fair price? Yes, I think it is. I think both guys are very unpredictable. I think that even though Fucsovics has proven before he can win on the ATP level in terms of titles, do I trust him? Not really. And I do think the Zandschulp skill level is definitely noticeable. The problem is the shot selection can be underwhelming, the unforced error issue can be massive, and you're looking at what could be a very competitive and unpredictable matchup, like the entire event. So for me, I'm going to say that I think the right person's favored. I think that based on the competition and based on the ease of victory, I think Fucsovics has looked better than Zandschulp on court so far in the event. Zandschulp's been fine. You lose a set 6-0, though, to Baez with 20-plus errors in the first set. You come back and win. But you're looking at who he's beaten. Arnaldi's a good win. Boo, I know he beat Tsitsipas, but I think Boo, we know, is a challenger guy trying to make the leap to the ATP, and he's not going to win a title anytime soon on the ATP level. So I'd say a pretty decent path for him. And Perricard once again punted a 5-2 lead in the second set. So Zandschulp, I understand that you still have to beat who's in front of you, but the fact is he's dropped the set 3 times here. Should have been 4. Perricard gave the set back to him. But I think he's been vulnerable, and I think Fucsovics, with this consistency, can get the job done. He's been good. Beat Munar in straight, beat Agut straight, ended up beating Griekspoor in 3. Griekspoor's a talented player, especially on hard court, so no shame in dropping a set there. And Gaston we know is not very good on hard court, and he beat him in straight sets. I think that I'm going to go with the favorite here. I think I am going to go with Fucsovics. Do I feel great about it? Nah, kinda. I don't feel amazing about it by any means, but I do think that he should be a bigger price. I saw Caesars had minus 140. I do think having 0 sets on your schedule on Friday compared to your opponent, who had to play about 3.5, is a pretty big edge, because he had to finish the second set against Boo, play the third set against Boo entirely, and then had 2 sets against Perricard. So 3.5 sets on the schedule for Friday for Zandschulp, 0 on the schedule for Fucsovics. If this does end up going deep, I do trust Fucsovics' I'd say, once again, scheduling more and his actual, I'd say, rest more in what could be a marathon. So I think that's going to actually help out Fucsovics in this one. Not to mention he's actually won titles before. Zandschulp has not. So I do think that Zandschulp might choke again. We'll see. I like the over in this matchup. I think win or lose for either guy, it should not be easy. I see a close matchup. History backs it up. Even the one matchup that Fucsovics did win in straight sets, it wasn't exactly easy by any means. He won in Adelaide 6-3, 7-6. So I do think you're looking at a spot where it might end up going the distance, and I think you might end up seeing it go to a third set. I'll go with Fucsovics. I think he should be a bigger favorite. I think money will come in on him. I think a lot of people will focus on the amount of tennis that one of the guys played compared to Fucsovics yesterday, and I could see this turning into a minus 140, minus 150 maybe at close. We'll see. Point is, though, I do see a 140 out there in Caesar, so 125 might not be there for that much longer. We'll see, but I do think that Fucsovics should be favored. I think it makes sense he's favored, and I think that based on the eye test, he's looked like the better player so far in Winston-Salem. So I'll go with him in this one. I'll go with the over as well. Don't mind the team totals here. I see Sashi mentioning that he thinks the match is going to be a break fest with a ton of break points, a ton of potential choking, and donating serve. I agree. I think it's going to be very, very unpredictable. I think it might go 3 sets as well. But from what I've seen with the Zandschulp before, as soon as you get your hopes up, he tends to fall apart. And I do think that despite playing well, Fucsovics has the rally patience to, I'd say, wait out mistakes from the Zandschulp. The shot selection could be a problem. The serving percentage could be a problem. I'll go with Fucsovics in this one. I don't feel amazing once again about the matchup. It's a very ugly matchup on paper, but it should be unpredictable, should be fun, and should be full of drama. Give me the over in this one. Give me Fucsovics to get the job done in this one. And once again, I don't mind picking an absolute marathon, or maybe live betting's the way to go, where if you see a guy maybe down a break early in a set, don't be afraid to get creative. You might end up seeing a guy fold later on in a set. If the Zandschulp's up a break in the third set, for example, he might choke again. We'll see. I know that he held his nerves well against Alcaraz in the U.S. Open, as he won in straight sets, but it's one thing to win when you have no expectations at all, and nobody gave him a chance against Alcaraz. The fact is, now he actually kind of has a decent chance of winning his first ever title. At least Rune was a decent favorite in those matchups. Now he's basically a pick'em to win his first ever title. I'm a little bit scared that the Zandschulp's going to fall apart again. So give me Fucsovics in this one, and give me the over for this matchup. Anyway, it's going to wrap it up for the actual preview of the final. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For into that, the reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Circa, because they are still hosting three of the biggest football contests for the coming NFL season. They have Circa Survivor, Circa Million, and Circa Grandissimo. Over $20 million guaranteed prizes. And a reminder, you can also hang out at SGPN, who are at Circa right now for Circa Contest Weekend from the 21st to 23rd. Amazing weekend, including live shows at open bars. I know the College Experience guys are there. I know Kobe and Moneyline Mac are there. I know that Steffi's there as well. Ryan and Sean are there every weekend. But the point is, there are a couple of guys there at SGPN right now. I'm not there, though. I was there last week. So, once again, if you do want to see some guys at SGPN, check out the Circa Contest Weekend. If not, that's fine, too. But just a heads up. You also have a discount code for Circa. If you use the code SGP15, you get a nice 15% off your stay at Circa. And a reminder, they get the contest open to everyone. You have to sign up in Nevada, though. You can play from anywhere, though, with the help of our proxy. Go to footballcontest.com. Use code SGP. Get $50 off your proxy fees. We're also brought to Bank Fantasy, because they're doing WrestleMania for the upcoming NFL season. It's happening all summer long. 15 million prizes, 2 minute first place, no waiver wire, no trades, and a reminder that you could also use Underdog for pick'em entries if you want to create your own entries on actual games. A reminder, you win up to 500 times your entry. When you sign up, though, for an account, use the brand new offer for Underdog for new customers. Play just $5, get $50 in bonus funds when you use the promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the final between Fucsovics and Zandschulp in Winston-Salem. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. So for the lock on the show, I think I am going to go with the favorite here. Thought about the team total, but there's a chance that the Zandschulp's exhausted. We'll see what happens. Forgot to mention, by the way, a fun joke. I mentioned a second ago that the Zandschulp's last final was against Rune in the massive choke job. After this matchup, his first-round U.S. Open opponent is Rune. Small world. I found that kind of fascinating. Anyway, point is for the lock. I am going to go with the favorite here. Give me Fucsovics money line at minus 125. I do trust the experience more. He has 2 titles on the tour. He's made 4 finals. The Zandschulp, his first time has ever been in a final outside of Munich in the ATP level. And the fact is, with him never winning a title before, and with the choke job that he had in the last one, I'm concerned that mentally he might deteriorate if he falls behind at some point. And I do think you're looking at Fucsovics, who plays pretty consistently, he keeps the ball in play, has an underrated amount of power, and I think that he's objectively a solid player. The issue's always been injuries for him, but he had a day off yesterday, and Zandschulp had to play 3.5 sets against Boo and Perricard. I think it's a good spot for Fucsovics, and I do think that Fucsovics has looked better than Zandschulp so far. Fucsovics has only dropped 1 set in the event, and that was against Griekspoor, a solid server, and a guy who's, I think, objectively good on hard court. As for Zandschulp, he's dropped 3 sets. Should have been 4. Perricard, once again, gave the set back to him. But I do think Fucsovics has been playing better right now. I mentioned a second ago, Zandschulp's been dropping sets left and right, and he had to play 3.5 sets yesterday. It's a really good spot for Fucsovics. I'll play the price, though. I think 125 is appealing. I think it's going to climb closer to the actual start time at around 5 p.m. Eastern. Give me Fucsovics to close at 140, 145. I'll take the money line now before it moves as my lock. I'll dare Zandschulp to finally get over the hump and to win his first ever ATP title. Now, for the dog, though, I'm going to call for a tough match. Give me the over 2.5 sets here at plus 130. Zandschulp said a second ago, he's dropped 3 sets already. Should have been 4, but the fact is he's been very inconsistent with his play. He gets bageled by Baez in a set, then he wins the next set 6-1. It's been very streaky in terms of his form so far in the event. I think that there is a path for both guys to struggle in a set, and you end up seeing Zandschulp struggle with unforced errors, then he hits the spots, and he's able to be aggressive and come forward. I see a pretty tough match either way, so I'll gamble on it. Give me the over 2.5 sets, not to mention the fact that 2 of the 3 meetings in their careers also went 3 sets. I see a war either way. I'll pick Fucsovics to win, because if I'm picking a war, I'll pick the guy with more stamina in the tank. But I do think it'll be tough. I think it'll be very unpredictable, and Sasha mentioning that he doesn't really trust either guy to keep their nerve. I agree. Give me a war here. Give me the over 2.5 sets at plus 130 as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock's going to be the money line for Fucsovics. Not really going to be too creative here. Give me the favorite on the money line at minus 125. For the dog, give me Fucsovics and Zandschulp over 2.5 sets at plus 130. It's going to wrap it up for the show. A reminder, we have 2 episodes coming out for Saturday. We have the U.S. Open for the men and the women. So keep an eye out for the preview episodes for both of those events. We're going to do quarter odds for both. We'll do the outrights and, of course, the lock and dog picks for both shows. So keep that in mind. I know that the episodes have been pretty, I'd say, quiet recently because of the bad schedule. I was in Vegas, etc. Now we're back to doing every round for the U.S. Open. We're back to normal. So keep an eye out for 2 more episodes coming out for the U.S. Open. Until next time, I'm on Twitter's Radio. Good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.